All right, and we back on the forecast. Now, as a community, we have to get back into the mindset of protecting each other. The dominant society gets a lot of its power by staying on code. They understand the importance of separating the men from the women and children. A lot of their strength comes from attacking black men in groups or with weapons. And then they try to go after unprotected targets like the elderly, the children, and people who can't defend themselves. And they don't care if it's a woman that's pregnant because they are just as brutal, if not more, with pregnant women. They didn't show them any mercy. In fact, they were seen as a threat too because there's no telling what that baby would grow up to be or do. And as black men, ever since slavery, we haven't really held up our end of protecting our women and children. They could literally come into our homes anytime they felt like it and take our wives or our children at any time to be raped if they didn't just do it right in front of you. There's no way you should ever let that happen. But that was the real rape culture in America. And they didn't care if a woman was pregnant. They would still work her, beat her, torture her, rape her, and then after that, sell her children away. Then after slavery, they became even more brutal, especially the pregnant women. As brutal as they were during slavery, when they wanted black women to get pregnant so they can produce more slaves. Once chattel slavery ended, a pregnant black woman was seen as a threat. And after Reconstruction, not only were many black men hung, a lot of black women were tortured and hung too. And now today they might want to pass anti-lynching bills. But 100 years ago, you had cases like the sister Mary Turner. In 1918, a 21-year-old woman who was 9 months pregnant vowed to get justice for her husband who was just lynched. Now, a black woman who dared to stand up to white supremacists in the white supremacy structure pissed off a lot of white people. Even though this woman was 9 months pregnant, a mob attacked her, tied her up upside down, poured gasoline and oil on her, and then set her on fire. Somehow she lived through all of that, so then they slit her body open, and her unborn baby fell on the ground. And then people took turns stomping on the unborn baby, crushing his head and his body until it died. Then after that, they shot Mary Turner around 200 times, and then after that started mutilating her body. They would literally use our body parts as souvenirs, and many times take a picture with the body to make a postcard out of it. Then in 1946, another black woman, Dorothy Malcom, who was 7 months pregnant, they also slit her body open and took out her unborn child.
A new report we covered here on Democracy Now! Called Lynching in America has brought the legacy of racial terror back into the public conversation. And now federal authorities are reportedly investigating whether people who carried out one of the worst mass lynchings in recent history are still alive and can be brought to justice. It was July 25th, 1946, when a white mob in rural Georgia ambushed a car carrying two African-American couples, dragged them out, and shot them to death. One of the men, George Dorsey, was a military veteran who had recently returned from serving 5 years overseas in World War II. His wife, Murray Dorsey, was also killed. Dorothy Malcom, the other woman in the car, was 7 months pregnant. The mob cut her open and removed her unborn child. Her husband, Roger, had just been bailed out of jail after he was accused of stabbing a white man. A coroner estimated people in the crowd fired more than 60 shots at the two couples at close range. The horrific attack was carried out near Walton County, Georgia, not far from Moores Ford Bridge. It became known as the Moores Ford lynching and sparked a national outcry, even prompting President Harry Truman to push for civil rights reform. The FBI also investigated, but no one was ever convicted of the four murders.
Now that could all change. A relative of one of the men allegedly involved in the attack has come forward in a videotaped interview with the NAACP. Wayne Watson says his uncle and several other men he named were members of the Ku Klux Klan. This is a clip from his 2013 interview with then-president of the NAACP, Ben Jealous.
If people try to bribe me, I've been to prison, a detention center.
Why does this case bother you so much? I mean, you've had a lot of people ask you to keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
Why do you stay interested in it?
Why?
Yeah.
Because I'm tired of it. I'm tired of when you go through life, you living with lies or you living with people talking about things. I want it all over with. The racism, I mean, I've been on the street, and I told people I dated a black woman, everything, and you can't get nothing. A white man goes around here and says he dating a black woman or hang around black people. You can't get no loan. You can't go to no bank, borrow money or nothing. They turn you down.
This week, the Guardian newspaper reported that after Wayne Watson's interview, the FBI spoke with one of the men he identified, his uncle, his father's brother, a man named Charlie Peppers, who's now 86 years old. Peppers said 2 FBI agents visited him last year and questioned him for about 40 minutes. The FBI has not confirmed the report, but says the probe into the attack remains an active investigation.
Alan Cook, the DA, was trying to find out who knew about it, nothing like that. Evidently, my attorney told somebody or told him. Because next thing I know, everybody in Walden County knew I was the one that knew about the KKK, who's alive. And people try to bribe me. I've been to prison, a detention center, and they offered me money. Robert Mitchell offered me $250,000 to keep my mouth shut and walk away in '99. I told him I wouldn't do it. He said, "You'll be dead before you ever testify."
Now, during the Moore Ford Bridge lynching in Georgia, where 2 couples were brutally murdered by a lynch mob, the 2 women had their arms broken so they could be tied to a tree, and then all 4 people were shot up. They literally cut the fetus out of their sister Dorothy Malcom, but no one was ever arrested or even charged for these murders. Even though they know who did it and the people are still alive today, but they still haven't charged anybody or put anybody in jail because they stay on code. And today they still do the same thing. Just like that white man who tried to attack that pregnant black woman in the parking lot. He just didn't realize there was an armed black man who was practicing the Second Amendment, was going to be there and ready to protect this woman. And when there was a black man there to punch him in the face, then all of a sudden he turned into the victim. And it's not just regular citizens. The police themselves have no problem going after pregnant black women. The Chicago police caused his sister Elaina Turner to have a miscarriage after they tased her in the stomach while she was pregnant.
Tonight, a CBS 2 investigation. A Chicago woman says a police officer caused her to have a miscarriage when he shot a taser into her stomach. The incident happened in front of her children, who were frightened and crying. As Dave Savini reports, the officer has a troubled past, including being suspended.
I was screaming for my life.
Elaina Turner's fear directed at a police officer.
My both hands are like this, and I hear the taser, taser.
She says it began in 2013 when police were going to wrongly tow her fiance's van. The officer behind this incident, Patrick Kelly, who has a lengthy list of complaints against him.
She says Kelly went for his taser after she asked if she could get her child's car seat out of the van.
She says Kelly yelled out the words, taser, 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 before deploying it.
And as I hear that, I look down and I have a taser in my belly. Then I get 2 more in my arm.
The 32-year-old, who's never been convicted of anything in her life, says she collapsed on the ground as Kelly stood over her and continued to activate the taser, sending jolt after jolt into her body.
And he continued to do that for at least maybe about 2 minutes of me on the ground while my children is on the porch watching this whole situation.
Elaina Turner was pregnant.
And you had a miscarriage?
Yes, a couple days later.
Patrick, we just want to talk to you.
Call my attorney.
She's making an allegation that you used excessive force.
This is an officer who's had more than 20 complaints by citizens over the years.
Jeffrey Granich, Turner's attorney, says despite her complaint, IPRA failed to question Kelly about this for 2 years. Not until a federal lawsuit was filed.
Officer Kelly, I think right now, is pretty much the poster child for what's wrong with the Chicago police, what's wrong with IPRA, what's wrong with accountability within the Chicago police.
I need to ask you some questions about that night. As the 2 investigators first reported, Kelly is now under investigation for another case, the 2010 near-fatal shooting of his friend Mike Laporta. It happened at Kelly's house with Kelly's gun after a night of heavy drinking. Kelly was disciplined for not securing his gun and for swinging at a responding female police sergeant. Can we talk about Laporta with you? The police have reopened the case. He served a 2-month suspension for the Laporta case and went right back to work on the streets in the police district where Elaina Turner lives.
Are you frustrated that this officer remains on the street?
Yes, it really makes me mad, and I don't think that he should be allowed to do this to anybody else.
Attorney Jeff Granich is suing the city and Officer Pat Kelly in federal court. A spokesperson for the Independent Police Review Authority says its investigation into Turner's case against Kelly is expected to be completed soon, and that they have changed the way IPRA manages cases to ensure quality and timeliness for all investigations. Officer Kelly has been ordered by a judge to be deposed again in the Laporta civil case within the next 30 days. Originally, Kelly claimed that Laporta shot himself, but police have reopened that case.
Now, the police were there to tow her boyfriend's car, which she had nothing to do with. She just wanted to get her baby seat out of the car. And when she asked to get the baby seat, the cop, Patrick Kelly, ended up tasing her, hitting her right in the stomach. He said even after she was down, he stood over top of her, still tasing her, in front of her kids and everything. Now, this cop, who was the one who had the history, with over 20 complaints already filed against him, and already being investigated for another shooting that happened at his house, while this woman who has never been in trouble, but the police refused to even look into it for 2 years, until a lawsuit forced them to say they were going to look into it. And even though he caused this woman to have a miscarriage for no particular reason, they justified it, and of course he's right back on the force. In Indianapolis, another woman, Ladonna Dixon, who was also pregnant, she ended up getting beat badly by Officer Scott Childers, and he caused her to have a miscarriage.
Did the officer step outside of the color of law when he decided to give my client 2 black eyes and send her to a jail where she loses a baby? I cannot think of any reason why someone could walk away from a police encounter with these bruises, with 2 black eyes and busted lips and cuts on her arm and cuts in her face. I can't see any reason why this would occur.
Indianapolis woman is suing the city for police brutality, and today she's speaking out about the arrest made more than a year ago. She talked with our crime beat reporter Steve Jefferson, who now joins us live. Steve, what'd she say?
Well, Scott, I just met with her and her attorney here at her attorney's office on North Shadeland Avenue. They have made it quite clear they are seeking punitive damages against the officer and the Metropolitan Police Department. The alleged arrest injuries happened in June of 2009. That's when 25-year-old Ladonna Dixon says an officer beat her for no reason. Dixon says she was trying to stay with a friend who paramedics were treating for a seizure.
And that's when he grabbed me by my right arm. And he pulled me to the ground, started kicking me after he handcuffed me, maced me.
Dixon says the officer ignored her warning. She was pregnant.
I told him, I said, "Sir, I'm pregnant." He says, "I don't care." Proceeded to kick me and beat on me.
The injuries happened June 2009 on Nelson Court as she refused police orders to stay away from a friend being treated by paramedics for a seizure. Her attorney, Everett Powell, says they decided to file the lawsuit. He calls the alleged arrest injuries inexcusable. Despite the strong allegations from Ladonna Dixon, he remains on the street enforcing the law.
I just want to make sure that I can protect everyone else, because I didn't get protected.
This person was angry, was enraged, and just beat her. She was beaten so bad that she passed out. She was hemorrhaging directly after getting beat like this.
Dixon claims that the beating continued there off of her front porch. She says she miscarried at the processing center just hours after her arrest.
This is a crime, point blank. This is a crime.
Now, this woman, Ladonna Dixon, who had called paramedics because her friend passed out at her house, and she said she was trying to stay with her just to make sure she was okay, but Officer Scott Childers said she couldn't be around and she had to go in the house. The cop said she didn't do what he told her to do and she wasn't complying. So he had to beat her and stomp her and tase her, even though she was pregnant and she ended up losing her baby. Of course, he wasn't punished at all and he's still on the force. Then in Georgia, you have another woman, Raven Dozier, who got kicked in the stomach by DeKalb County Police, Officer Jerad Wheeler. And this woman was 9 months pregnant at the time.
A woman tells us a DeKalb County police officer kicked her when she was almost 9 months pregnant. And now we learn that officer is under investigation. Investigative reporter Jody Fleischer is in DeKalb County with how this happened and questions about how the department handled it.
Justin, Raven Dozier told me she wasn't even involved in the original call for police. It was a child custody issue involving her brother. But she was there trying to help calm him down. And when officers tased him, she started crying. After all, she was nearly 9 months pregnant.
fat daddy.
4-month-old Levi is now a happy, healthy little boy, but his parents worried that wouldn't be the case because of what happened 2 weeks before he was born.
It was scary. I was shocked.
Raven Dozier was at her grandmother's house watching her brother argue with police. She was crying and questioning why they tased him. Suddenly, she was on the ground.
He really just didn't want me asking him any questions. When I did question him, that's when he kicked me.
A kick so hard it bruised Dozier's stomach. She had an emergency C-section 2 weeks later when doctors realized Levi had defecated in the womb. In his report, Officer Jerad Wheeler described it as a front push kick to the abdomen, as he was taught to do at the academy.
It's supposed to be used, for forcing entry into a door or something like that. What kind of a human being kicks a pregnant woman?
Dozier's attorney was even more shocked when he saw what happened with her complaint to the DeKalb Police Department. No investigation at all. And 5 supervisors, including internal affairs, said Wheeler's actions met policy.
They're showing that there is an ongoing pattern and practice of attempting to clear officers of clearly illegal, unconstitutional, and improper conduct.
Wheeler's report says Dozier was coming toward him in an aggressive manner, that it was very dark and she had a large shirt and he couldn't tell she was pregnant. But jail workers noticed right away and refused to take her on an obstruction charge, which prosecutors have now dropped.
I believe that something should be done. Men go to jail every day for hitting women, and it's not okay just because he's a police officer.
We checked the records here at the police department and found 2 other use of force complaints against that same officer. In all 3 complaints, the victim was not the main focus of the original police investigation. And in all 3 cases, the officer faced no punishment, but he could now.
He was not, he had no reason to do that. And for higher authority for his boss to say that it was okay, his boss is wrong too.
We filed an open records request and found 2 more use of force complaints against Wheeler. One from a woman whose daughter had just been in a car accident, another when Wheeler responded to the wrong address and shot a family's dog. The department justified his actions and exonerated him.
Into showing that there is an ongoing pattern and practice of attempting to clear officers of clearly illegal, unconstitutional, and improper conduct.
Wheeler charged Dozier with obstruction. This afternoon, prosecutors dropped that obstruction charge against Dozier, and now they're turning their attention to Officer Wheeler's actions. A DeKalb spokesperson didn't want to comment on how the department handled this incident.
Now, the police were there over a custody dispute with her brother, which she had nothing to do with, but she was out there trying to calm her brother down and trying to get the police to stop tasing him. Now, this cop, Jerad Wheeler, said she was coming at him, so he decided to front push kick her in the stomach like he was trained to do, even though she was almost 9 months pregnant. This cop said it was dark, she had a big shirt on, and he couldn't tell she was pregnant, even though the workers at the jail immediately could tell she was pregnant and refused to even book her. She ended up having to get an emergency C-section after her baby was defecating in the womb, but luckily her baby was born healthy. She tried to file a complaint, but the police didn't even look into it. They just automatically signed off on it and justified it. And even though he was the one that had a history and complaints against him, he was never punished and is still on the force. Now, none of these women had anything to do with the original call for why the police was there, but they all ended up getting assaulted regardless if they were pregnant. Now, you're never going to see stuff like this happening to white women, and if it was, there would be an all-out war. And we have to protect those of us who can't protect themselves, like the elderly, children, women, especially if they're pregnant. The dominant society has no problem putting us back in our place, even if that means killing us, if they even think we're thinking about uprising. And if we can't put aside our differences to even protect our unborn children, especially after the history that we have had, then the same thing is going to continue to happen. Yeah, they have their differences, but they know how to put aside their differences when it comes to us. They're no longer French American or German American or English American. They get on code with their whiteness. And in order for us to protect ourselves, we have to get on code. They have done so many sick things to us. At some point, enough has to be enough. And we have to realize we are the only ones that can change things. And at the end of the day, we are all we got.
I can honestly say I've never gone by that memorial and not felt some level of regret or shame.
Hometown hero, Police Chief Mike Tuskin, is motivated by the same family secret that haunts him.
Nobody wants to talk about a lynching that their family was involved in.
Tuskin was in his mid-20s when his mother first told him his grandfather's sister played a significant role in the darkest day of Duluth's history.
My great aunt was at a fair out in West Duluth and comes home and alleges that she was sexually assaulted by 3 African-American men.
An allegation that was enough to incite a mob of nearly 10,000 people. It was proven false after a doctor's examination confirmed there was no evidence of rape. According to documents from the NAACP, the 19-year-old told the lie to cover up her own misdeeds with a man by the name of James Sullivan.
And I'm not sure that anyone but Irene would ever be able to speak to that.
Irene Tuskin took the lie that she told about the 3 men to her grave.
KUWS radio host and founder of the Clayton Jackson McGee Foundation, Henry Banks, says the lynchings still have a direct impact on issues facing the Duluth African-American community today.
The unemployment rate, the lack of real professional opportunities for communities of color, the mistrust that's still here, that's all from the 1920 lynching. It just carries over.
Problems Chief Tuskin acknowledges and takes seriously.
That's part of the reason that when I became chief, we changed our mission statement.
Despite the lynchings happening 48 years before Tuskin was born, his family's history fuels his dedication to create a better Duluth.
Nothing I will do in my lifetime will ever take away the terrible tragedy that happened in 1920. But what I can do is live my life well, use this role as a leader to ensure that we have the best police department and that I am advocating for every single person in this community. And that will be my history. That will be my chapter that I write.
My family, my southern wing of my family is, I think, typical. The first one I decided to go as a law student to Howard University. My Little Rock, Arkansas grandmother's proposition was you can go and teach them, but you can't be a fellow student with them. You can't be a fellow student with them. And it so upset her that she sort of to stop me from going and ruining my life. She said the only whites that do this with blacks do it in the end because of lust. And she said we had a white minister and he preached equality and brotherhood, and in the end he ran off with a black woman, and every white man who does this is basically doing it for lust. It goes back to the old, the slavery relations and white women's fears about what intercourse, social intercourse would mean if it was black and white. This great grandmother who adored Eleanor Roosevelt, but on this issue of black and white just was horrified that I would be a student at a black school. She, as her final act to stop me, she said, she sort of collapsed, and as we carried her upstairs, she was saying, if God made them equal, I hate God, I hate God, I hate God. It was very, very deep inside of people. And it isn't just the United States, race prejudice is 3,000 years deep in India, where caste comes from color. It's an incredibly deep prejudice in the human mind. And we made great progress in uprooting a good part of it during the 50s and 60s.
Philadelphia police are investigating a note written by a member of the force to a fellow colleague. Well, that letter called that person grotesque and a filthy animal. Eyewitness News reporter Anita O joins us now from police headquarters to explain exactly what might have sparked this kind of letter. Anita.
That's right, Natasha and Jess. Commissioner Richard Ross says that it is not clear who this letter was directed to. What is clear is that it was highly offensive, inappropriate, and also contained racial undertones.
I had to read it a couple times to say, wow. I mean, wow was my first response.
Philadelphia Police Commissioner Richard Ross is responding to an offensive letter written and signed by a homicide detective to a fellow colleague.
When approached, he said he wrote it.
The detective admitted to taping the letter above a trash can in a shared workspace after another officer reportedly left rib bones from dinner in the garbage.
Never really seen it done quite like this. And so I'm deeply disturbed and dismayed by it.
The detective has been with the department for 22 years, says Commissioner Ross, and has a clean internal file. The letter reads in part, quote, "You can't blame a filthy savage for being a filthy savage," and, quote, "As I'm sure you were not burdened by significant schooling, you simply are ignorant of the fact you were little more than an upright animal."
There's no indication that he knew exactly who he was addressing.
What is clear, Ross says, is his commitment to upholding the integrity of the department. The officer in question has been removed from street duty pending the outcome of the investigation, but the consequences could be severe.
It's possible dismissal.
Now, Ross says that he has never spoken directly with this detective in question. He adds that he is committed to enforcing all of the training and practices for all 6,500 sworn officers.
I ask that Ted Wheeler immediately resign as head of the police.
This group is outraged over what the Willamette Week uncovered. Hundreds of text messages between Portland Police Lieutenant Jeffrey Nia and Joey Gibson, the leader of the right-wing group Patriot Prayer.
I didn't think it was going to be a big deal. It's like, you know, it's just text messages that I've been having with the police department.
In one of those text exchanges, Lieutenant Nia addresses the fact that a Patriot Prayer member has an active warrant out for his arrest. Nia wrote, "Just make sure he doesn't do anything which may draw our attention if he still has the warrant in the system." In another text message during a protest, Nia wrote, "Now's a great time to break down the rally and be able to leave. We have a large group of Antifa trying to flank us and you. We are stopping them for now, but not sure how long."
I'm particularly concerned about the encouragement that seems to be offered to Mr. Gibson. He associates himself with people who are in fact white supremacists and white nationalists.
Mayor Wheeler says this sort of communication undercuts the credibility of the entire Bureau.
Here's a point you need to understand.
But an adjunct professor of criminal justice and former Hillsborough police chief says beyond giving away tactical information and getting into specifics about people and warrants,
there's absolutely nothing wrong with communicating with adversarial people representing an adversarial group like demonstrators. Nothing wrong with that at all, because the goal is public safety, their safety and the safety of the community.
We build rapport, we talk to folks, and in part that's to try to get information out of them that's going to help us do our jobs better.
That's Lieutenant Craig Morgan. He's the president of the Portland Police Commanding Officers Association, and tonight he's standing by Lieutenant Jeff Nia as backlash continues to build against him and what some have called a friendly relationship with the head of Patriot Prayer, Joey Gibson.
I understand that it might appear one-sided and that Lieutenant Nia is speaking far more with Patriot Prayer than he is with Antifa or left-leaning groups. The reality is he has made active efforts to reach out in both directions. The reason it appears lopsided, I think, is that he is it's been more receptive coming from Patriot Prayer.
On top of all of that, Morgan says he's upset with Mayor Ted Wheeler and Commissioner Joanne Hardesty, calling their statements last night, quote, a rush to judgment.
My initial reaction was, quite frankly, disappointment, primarily in the mayor, and it feels like the process will not be impartial for my member, which is obviously really concerning.
And with the mayor now ordering an investigation into possible Bureau bias, Morgan says when the dust settles, one thing will be clear.
I'm very confident that by the time all of this is looked at, not only will they conclude that Lieutenant Nia was within Police Bureau policies, but that his behavior was absolutely appropriate and that it was designed with the intent of making Portland safe.
And earlier tonight, Chief Danielle Outlaw took to Twitter with the following message saying, quote, the subject of police bias during protests has been an ongoing concern. We recognize the urgency of this matter and will work with our community to identify solutions.
Well, now to a
related story that a number of viewers have asked us about. WKYC cameras caught one of the Cleveland EMS workers on that marijuana gummies case making what some have interpreted as an inappropriate gesture. Lena Lai just got off the phone with the workers' union rep, and Lena, they're telling you this is all being blown out of proportion.
Yeah, Sarah, the paramedics union president spoke to us by phone on that paramedic's behalf, and the paramedic admits to making the sign, knowing that Channel 3's cameras were rolling, but he emphatically denied that he was making a racist gesture. He says he was photobombing with a made you look sign that goes back to a decades-old prank called the circle game. It was an ever so brief gesture that was part of our story Monday night, an image that lasted 1 1/15 of a second. Did you see it? Keen-eyed viewers caught it and complained. Less on Facebook. I happened to notice the paramedic making the controversial white power sign, a white supremacy symbol. Did your staff notice? Honestly, Les, no.
He is completely appalled that people would absolutely think that he is doing something other than a game.
Paul Mellish, the president of the Cleveland EMS union, spoke on behalf of that paramedic, who we are choosing not to identify because the husband and father of two now fears for his family's safety.
He has no idea, that this is anything other than the circle game.
The circle game, a prank, according to dictionary.com, that first surfaced in the 1970s and 80s, later popularized by the show Malcolm in the Middle that aired in November 2000.
And when you're doing this, below your waist, you get to hit them in the arm.
But the OK sign, according to the Anti-Defamation League, was part of a 2017 hoax campaign on social media to stand for white power because of how the fingers form a W and a P. While discredited as a hoax, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, because some white nationalists have used the sign, people should be careful about using it.
Think about this just from a common sense perspective. Why would you sit there on a call like that and sit there and make a racist symbol when you know the media is on you? That doesn't even make sense.
So tonight, the mayor's office tells us that the paramedic has been reassigned until the safety director can review the video and decide whether there should be any disciplinary action. Sarah?
All right, Lena, I have to admit I wasn't familiar with the symbol, but thanks for clearing it up for all of us.
Racist comments reportedly made by a local first responder could put the community he serves in danger. Funding for the Jeb Stuart Volunteer Rescue Squad is now in question. 10 News reporter Tommy Lopez joins us with details of the investigation that's now getting national attention. Tommy.
Yeah, we're talking about Alex McNabb. He's an EMT with the Jeb Stuart Volunteer Rescue Squad. He's on unpaid leave right now as the Virginia Department of Health investigates his conduct. Reports from CNN and the Huffington Post took excerpts from him while on a white supremacist podcast, which he frequently co-hosts. He uses his real name on the show, but made these comments in question while in character. He's used multiple slurs for black people, and in this segment in 2016, he jokes about a mostly black apartment complex where he frequently responds.
Complex is noted for large groups of people from all over Africa and West Africa. Funny how they self-segregate. It's jokingly referred to as Ebola Alley by the crew that regularly works there, as there's so many sick people coming in and out of there.
McNabb also told a story where his character mistreated a black child while drawing blood. He says the comments are a work of fiction, a comedy sketch, satire. He told the Huffington Post he doesn't discriminate when working with patients. There's no indication that McNabb mistreated anyone in his care. He didn't comment to 10 News. Patrick County Board of Supervisors Chairman Locke Boyce wants him fired.
I was absolutely disgusted and flabbergasted that in the first place, this guy has been working in healthcare for a period of years. This person has no place in healthcare delivery with those kind of views. He's reprehensible.
Terrorized that youngster with a needle and stabbed him in the arm using an improper needle size. Did you say that? Did you make that up? Do you think that's funny?
I think it's funny.
I don't.
Alex McNabb has been suspended from his post at Jeb Stuart Volunteer Rescue Squad after a Huffington Post report They found that McNabb made racist comments on a white supremacist podcast. Now, we streamed this meeting live tonight on our WFXR News app and on Facebook. McNabb calling all of this off-duty comedy, saying his free speech is under attack.
Would you say as winter approaches, hey, I got the floor, buddy.
Go ahead, get mad, dude.
As winter approaches, the animals go into hibernation and the ridiculousness of the 911 calls goes down.
Right now, people are laughing right now at this somewhere.
Yeah, I don't see them.
And I've been called a neo-Nazi and a racist and all this other stuff. There's no proof I'm a neo-Nazi. There's been a smear campaign against me by the Huffington Post.
The board brought up a resolution, but they did not get support to cut county funding to Jeb Stuart Volunteer Squad. They did, however, unanimously pass a resolution to publicly condemn racist ideology. The rescue squad issued a statement recently saying McNabb has been suspended without pay from his part-time position.
Jackson couple is outraged after they say Ridgeland police officers threatened their 6-year-old with a gun during a search Friday. Paul and Angela Thompson Roby say Ridgeland police officers arrived in an unmarked car at a home on Brisbane Lane looking for 23-year-old Carnegie Gray. Gray is Angela Roby's brother. The home belongs to her mother, Olivia Gray. The Robys say officers pointed their weapons at their child, who is special needs. Ridgeland PD Lieutenant John Neal says Gray was charged with contempt of court for failure to appear on a paraphernalia charge from 2012. He says during the arrest, Gray resisted Hinds County deputies and Ridgeland police.
My son was telling the police officers to stop, not to do that. Please don't hurt his uncle. And that's when the guns were drawn on him. And my mother was telling him, hey, please don't point your gun at my grandbaby. Please don't do that.
The Robys have contacted the FBI and the Attorney General's office. Ridgeland police say they have not filed a complaint with their department.
The mother of a 6-year-old that claims Raleigh police pulled a gun on him held a news conference just moments ago.
This comes just hours after Raleigh police released the body cam video of that incident. The police department says it doesn't support the version of events that LaDonna Clark described to the city council last week.
We'll hear from her in just a moment, but first we want to show you those body cam videos. CBS 17's Michael Hyland spent today going through all of it. And Michael, what have you found?
Now, LaDonna Clark went to city leaders frustrated about what her son and her parents went through during this search. But in these videos you're about to see, the Raleigh police say it shows they acted appropriately. This is body camera video we're seeing for the first time. Raleigh police searching a home in November on Friar Tuck Road. They wanted to find a man named Brian Clark, who they believed used a gun when he robbed an AT&T store. Clark was not at the home at the time, but several relatives were. LaDonna Clark said police knew that, but still came here and pointed guns at her 6-year-old son, Aiden, during the search. This is what she recently told City Council.
On a 35-degree and rainy night, my son with autism was forced out of the home with military-style rifles aimed at him and made to sit on the cold, wet ground for over an hour by RPD SWAT.
RPD released 8 body camera videos Friday taken at multiple angles, plus a 40-minute edited version. The officers brought an armored truck to the home and first called the people inside to let them know they'd arrived.
Raleigh Police Department, keep them outside.
A man living in the home comes out first. Then a few minutes later, his wife and her grandson, Aiden. This officer turns away as they walk out. But from this angle, you see them exit as well. Once they're out, the officers approach the home.
Raleigh Police Department SWAT team. Anybody else inside?
While they have their guns drawn, no one is inside the home during this. About 20 minutes after Mr. Clark first leaves his home, police say they can return.
Yeah, they can sit on the couch.
Raleigh police say they asked a court to authorize releasing these videos because they do not show officers pointing their guns at the Clarks and saying the officers followed the law and policies.
You will not deceive or bamboozle the public by releasing carefully crafted video that shows you going into the household, however refusing to show the video of my son and my mother, as well as my father.
This was one of the most controversial broadcasts of the 1968 season. It drew awards and protests in equal measure. Here is its key scene.
What is your nationality?
My nationality is Afro-American.
What is freedom?
Freedom is black power.
What is black power?
Black power is...
Do you know what black power is?
No.
Well, then you should never should make any statements if you don't know what they mean.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
All right. How old are you, young man?
I am 4 years old.
You're not 4, Eric. Now you tell me your right age. How old are you? How old are you?
I am 4 years old.
Are you sure you're 4?
Yes.
You're going to let me turn you around and tell you you're some other age? You're 6 years old, Eric.
No.
I can't hear you, Eric.
No.
Are you being frightened by me?
No.
I'm the teacher. I said you're 6.
I am 4 years old.
All right, then. You stand up for it, then. You shouldn't be weak. You stand up and say it. You ought to scream it in my face if I try to tell you different, right?
Yes.
Have a seat. Stand up, young man. Are you a Negro, Travis?
No.
Are you a flunky, Travis?
No.
What are you?
I am black and beautiful.
And what else are you? Are you a boy?
No.
What are you?
I'm a man.
What kind of man?
Black and beautiful man.
Or what kind? Are you an old man or a young man?
Young man.
You, young man, you come here. You're a Negro.
No.
I am your teacher. You are a Negro.
No.
Suppose I threatened to beat you, what would you say? Aren't you a Negro now?
No.
What are you?
I'm black and beautiful.
What is your nationality?
My nationality is Afro-American.
Suppose I had some money in my pocket. Suppose I gave you $1 to say that you're an American Negro. This is money now. Money talks. Money talks. This $1, and if you don't say it, you don't get it. You're an American Negro, aren't you?
No.
You won't have any money. You know you need money, don't you?
Yes.
You need money to live, don't you?
Yes.
All right. All you have to say, Leon, is that you're an American Negro. Aren't you an American Negro? Are you an American Negro?
No.
What are you?
I'm black and beautiful.
What's your nationality?
My nationality is Afro-American.
Very good, man. Keep it up. Go sit down. You had to think about that a minute, didn't you?
Yeah.
All right. All right, everybody. What is your nationality?
My nationality